I'm pumped. This is a big
Pump.
day
I'm excited for today.
because it's the 10th episode.
Oh my gosh, 10 episodes already.
Yeah, so I feel that we should do something special to mark the occasion. Perhaps we could talk about 10 things we like about work in 2024. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Number one. Let's start with number one instead of counting down from 10.
Touche.
Number one.
Start with the good news first.
Okay, this is one of the 10 things that I like about work in 2024. Might be a bit spicy, this one, but generative AI in the workplace. I feel so positive about this development
hmm
because of my experiments to date with these tools, these generative AI programs. Like everyone working today, knowledge workers, anyone that sits in front of a computer, they can potentially engage a really smart personal assistant to
hmm
help them be more productive. Whether that's Microsoft Copilot, OpenAI's ChatGPT. I mean, I even tried a new program the other day called
hmm
PenFriend.ai that will draft SEO ready blog articles for you.
Yep.
You enter a subject, it will pitch headlines to you, it will create an outline, and it will even develop the outline to a full written piece, and it will
hmm
mark the sections in the copy that you should actually, apply your human touch to and research and fact
hmm
check.
hmm
But the thing is, the skeleton of the article is actually SEO ready with all the headings structured in such a way it's friendly to search engines. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
no,
yeah,
that's
number
good.
one, generative AI in the workplace.
hmm What do you think about those though? And I've spoken to a colleague of mine who in her old workplace, she was actually made to sign a document, a piece of paper that said she would refrain from using ChatGPT in the workplace
Oh,
completely. Yeah.
right. So this is someone who has just started a new role, and that was
No,
something
so
the
in
employer
her
wanted them to agree
no,
to.
in a previous role.
Oh,
Yeah, so they were made to sign an agreement to say that they wouldn't use ChatGPT in the workplace. So there's also that.
well, I guess it depends what you're doing. Um, it
Mm,
depends on the nature of your work. Like, I don't know if you heard about this situation with Air Canada, where they
no.
created a customer service chat bot
Mm-hmm.
and they released it on their website, and people, Air Canada customers, were engaging with it. And I don't know the fine details, but basically what happened is people were asking the Air Canada chatbot for refunds because they were unhappy about something, Air
Mm-hmm.
Canada's level of service or lack of service. And so the chatbot, it hallucinated. Well, this is a broad term. Apparently, generative AI processes
Mm-hmm.
can hallucinate. And so it actually responded to the customer saying, yes, you are owed a refund. And so it was issuing refunds.
Ah.
And so Air Canada was like, well, hell no. This we can't allow this, even though their chatbot was doing it. But it went to court, and the Canadian government actually refuted Air Canada's claim. And they said, well, the chat bot is actually acting as an agent of your company. So you have to honor those refunds because it was acting on your behalf.
Yeah, well, that
And
makes sense.
so, needless to say, I don't think they have that chatbot anymore. So, yeah, back to your friend's experience. I guess it depends on what sort of work is being done. I mean, that's an automated process, the chatbot. But For you, for me,
Mm,
working in marketing, I don't really see what the issue is
mm.
when you're treating it like an assistant.
Yeah,
It,
yeah,
it, it
absolutely.
lets us get a lot more work done, basically.
Even if you're looking at more, I guess, technical work, I mean, obviously, I've seen even the auto prompts within ChatGPT that, you can get it to assess your coding in Python or whatever it might be to like, you know, check for, I don't know, errors or whatever it might be. So even when you're looking outside of what we do in terms of marketing when it comes to messaging and copy and things like that, for me, that there's so much potential because I mean, we've been talking about data being, what is it, the new oil or whatever it is. Data's been around forever, but yet there's still so many gaps and so many opportunities there because who has the time to process all that data to really get the insights from it? So from my perspective, it's sort of, as well as the front end, day-to-day stuff, I think the opportunities in the deeper analysis aspects, that for me is super exciting as well. So I think I have to agree with you on that one.
And it definitely makes you more productive. I recently went to an event where I took pictures of
Mm-hmm.
some speakers. It was a technology event. I was engaged to create some promotional material, some posts from the event. The two speakers spoke for 45 minutes each. I just used the sound recorder on my phone, which is hooked to Otter, my
Mm-hmm.
AI transcription service. It just transcribed everything they said in real time. And so when it came time for me to create a post that summarized the whole event, I logged into Otter and said, Otter, please summarize speaker one's key takeaways. Otter, please summarize speaker two's key takeaways. It bullet pointed everything. Me as a person, as a human who knows the
Mm-hmm.
client, knows their value proposition, I was able to quickly scan all that and then build a post
Mm,
off that. But for me to manually listen to it all again, I mean, I don't know
mm.
what the efficiency gain was, but it was 3 hours of work became 45 minutes of work, basically.
Mm, mm.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
okay, that
that's
was number
exciting.
one. We've got nine more to go. Feel free to jump in and disagree or add your own. Okay, number two. Well, the availability of remote work. So I just think in person for deep work, locked into an open plan office, that's so 20th century. I mean, a lot of companies obviously can't handle the fact that people are geographically distributed or, they're working remotely, whether that's in a co-working space or at home. But I love remote work. So
Mm.
that's number two for me. What do you think?
I definitely, as a working mum, I am one of the many beneficiaries of remote work and hybrid working. I'm currently working in a 100% remote role, um, which means, as a family, we now have probably like less limitations on where we can live. We could live anywhere we wanted in Australia, really. And that's something we're considering for you guys watching. I am in Sydney, and if you read the news, you know how incredibly expensive it is in Sydney, especially for those who have not yet bought a home, which I have not. So yeah, so it's definitely been a huge door opener for me as a working parent. But there is, I will say though that I do miss the face-to-face interaction or in-person interaction. I still definitely think there's a place for it, and there's definitely companies out there like Atlassian being one who, when they basically are an example of where you put your focus and your priority, you can actually win. And not enough people do that or understand, how to get real benefits out of giving your employees total flexibility, but also being able to maximize creativity, productivity, and all of the important things that we were so used to getting just in person. I think the people who are really going to win in that arena are the ones who are putting the investment and effort into it. It's not simply saying, oh, yeah, you can work from home 2 days a week, in the office 3 days, or do you know what I mean? It doesn't come to you on a silver platter. But yeah, I think, out of 10, I love 9 out of 10 for remote work for me, definitely. But yeah, I do miss having the option of that face to face. I do have a colleague here in Sydney, but she's like well on the other side of Sydney, and so yeah, that would be my caveat. And I think I definitely agree with you. It would be one or two for me. It's definitely changed my career opportunities, I guess, or it just has made life a lot easier. It can be a lot more fluid too. I find myself, if I need to pause, I'll pause. Like we did that at work in the office anyway, didn't we, Tim? If
Oh yeah.
at 3 o'clock, we're feeling a little bit of that lump. How many times did we go, if not just you and me, or a group of us, just go on these mad treks to go find the best coffee spot, right? Because we're not robots. We need, and as we've discussed many times, a lot of those aha moments don't come from sitting here ticking the to-do list tasks off. Like those need to be done, of course. That's part of any role, but the deep work doesn't come from that. So yeah, I think I agree with you on that one. And those are my
I like that you use the words investment and effort in relation to companies having face-to-face days. I mean, it doesn't really cut it, as you say, to tell employees, okay, 2 days at home, 3 days in the office. I mean, if there are going to be in-person days, like make them count.
Yeah, absolutely.
Leverage all the advantages of that rather than just everyone staring at their laptop screen.
Or it's like I don't know, like a check-in point. Or if you're the senior person, and this is what I've seen through all of my different experiences since I've been back from like with the hybrid working model, is that the senior level people are the ones expected to like give back to, I guess, the team, because they're the ones who are approving and need to, so what is the benefit of it for them when they're not getting to their, priorities? And then, at the end of that workday, they haven't done anything in terms of the things that they need to also complete because they've been in back-to-back meetings. Like, to me, is that really an efficient or effective use of work? Maybe it is, because that one manager is influences so many different teams within the organizational structure. But when that person's, I guess, KPIs and priorities can be a lot heavier, there's an argument against that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well said. Number 3, I like this one. I like all of them. Collaboration can happen anywhere. So this sort of throws a spanner in the works of our previous point. Well, not really, but
No.
you do not have to be in the physical presence of someone to collaborate. As long as you have a decent internet connection, there are so many ways to collaborate, whether that's on Zoom, like what we're doing now, WhatsApp, project management tools like Asana, Google
Mm-hmm.
Docs. I mean, some of my best collaboration experiences have just been messaging people on platforms and exchanging ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, cool. I think that also works. If you give context to that, is that you probably earned the trust of that person or the
good point.
credibility on the other end. Um, so that obviously helps when you can kind of do things on the fly. But yeah, I agree. I love and I think that's, everyone talks about, or they used to, or they still do now, but the diversity in the workplace. Like, how more diverse can you be when you kind of really open it up to remote or work from anywhere? Yeah. And you're like, for example, if we use work from anywhere, if you've got a colleague, I don't know, somewhere completely different for a few weeks, and that change of perspective, just like, or you, like, I don't know, when you're on holiday, you're just like on that that best vibes kind of, and you think a little bit differently. I think, when you're working from anywhere, you can take that and impart it in all of your touch points. So yeah, that's one I hadn't thought about, collaboration from anywhere.
Yeah, I was on my regular walk the other day,
Mm,
trying my best to get 10,000 steps in a day. I don't succeed every day.
mm,
Um, but a client messaged me on WhatsApp with an idea, and I was in the walking mode vibe. I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. When I finish my 10,000 steps, I'll get onto it and get back to you. But the fact that I was on a walk and I
mm.
shared that with them, it seemed to energize the client. They actually liked the fact that I was doing something other than just staring at my laptop screen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I love that. Oh, on that, I just got a walking pad to add to my standing desk setup. So I'm excited to
can
see how
you
to.
educate me on a walking pad? What is it?
So it's like just a smaller version of a treadmill, no handles,
Ah,
quite slim. It only goes up to like 8 kilometers per
is it
hour, but it's
motorized or it's
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah, motorized. Yeah, it's got a little
really?
remote. Yeah, and it's just a slim version of a treadmill, really. It's just for those times when I'm just gonna give it a try and see if
So
like I can't just stand.
you can
Stand
get
and
your steps in.
yeah, while
Okay,
I'm standing up at my stand-up desk.
that's cool. What would be even better is if the kinetic energy you generate like feeds back into your
Computer.
electricity supply and reduces your power bill.
That actually reminds me of when I went to uni, and that was a while ago now. And they had like bicycles powering the smoothie blenders. And
Ah,
I
okay.
thought, yeah, that's interesting. But actually, you can get cycling ones as well with like a little table on it. That would be a bit strange because I couldn't ergonomically, that would be so uncomfortable. But yeah, let's see if it is a comfortable experience. Yeah, I'm keen because movement is great. Mm.
Yeah, I'm keen to hear about your experience with it, maybe in a couple of episodes' time. Yeah,
Let's see how it impacts my step count.
the Fix Your Feed podcast powered by Cat's Walking Pad. Okay,
So what are
on
we
that
on?
last point, up to number four. This is another one I really enjoy. Geographical and time zone barriers are no longer barriers
Mm.
because,
Elaborate.
well, I work with clients in Singapore and North America, but I'm in Sydney. I'm a long way from both.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose I'm cheating with point four because the previous one, point three, is collaboration can happen anywhere. But if collaboration can happen anywhere between anyone, number four, geographical and time zone barriers aren't as big a barrier as they were before because, I can log in early in the morning and that's like the afternoon for the North American clients. The Singapore client is only a couple of
Mm-hmm.
hours behind. So it just opens up the pool of people you can work with, I believe, now because of
And
digital connection.
do you think, okay, so what about when you're trying to, I'm not trying to throw a spanner in the works, I'm kind of just talking
Please.
out loud here.
You're
When you
crazy, Tim. I disagree with number four.
I don't disagree. I'm just throwing it out there. What if, okay, you think you need a meeting, and then
Mm.
you're trying to actually balance all of these different time zones and priorities. Um, what what do you think about that in terms of the time zone barrier when it comes to scheduling perceived needed meetings?
Well, it's a common agreement. Like earlier, you referred to people collaborating with you once you gain their trust.
Mm,
So further to that, once you have their trust, people in different time zones are a lot more amenable to finding a common time that works for all parties. But
mm,
if you're scheduling a meeting, it's so tempting to invite a dozen people to a meeting, but maybe only three people need to be in the meeting.
mm,
Perhaps the fact that you are in different time zones puts a greater emphasis on, well, who really needs to be in this meeting? Let's just have the key people.
mm. And the reason why I bring this up is when I, emphasize perceived need for the meeting is another way of, I guess, tackling that is the use of like looms or screen
Mm.
recordings or things like that,
Oh,
where essentially just people utilize, if you're wanting, let's use this as an example, you're wanting to like run through something with like your manager or another team member, like I guess there is a place for like maybe setting up the context either before or like for example, if you aren't sure about something in the CRM, you just turn the loom on and run through what it is you don't understand, and then you can share that with whatever team member. They can either answer that um with their own loom or through voice or whatever it might be, or when you do meet, then maybe it becomes less like a shorter meeting if you still need that face to face. Do you know what I
that,
mean? Like it
yeah,
doesn't
that's
need to be
excellent.
live in person. Like there's other ways.
That
I mean,
that's clever because a couple of episodes ago we were talking about the dreaded brainstorming or ideas meeting, and you made the point that, well, if people are primed for the meeting, there's going to be a lot more value from the meeting because you're not
yeah,
struggling to understand the context. Whereas your suggestion, sending looms to each other, you'll be able to get to the solution much quicker because everyone will understand what the problem or the challenge is they're trying to overcome.
yeah. I don't know. It's just I guess just looking at using tools or different tools to help you, I don't know, get things done better, or just kind of thinking outside of the box
Yeah,
because
I
like
like that.
if you've just come from back to back to backs and then your next meeting is a brainstorming meeting, I'm like, how good are your ideas going to be? I mean, some people are really good. They can literally, they can just pull ideas out of a box. But I know for me, it would take me a little while to even get in the right brain space for it.
Yeah, back to back to back would be on my list of 10 things I don't like. But anyway, okay, number five. All right, how do I define this? I think we're living in an age where there is an embarrassment of riches or plenty of information to solve creative challenges because
Mm,
I think people today are quite generous with what they know, especially if you carefully curate the people you follow on LinkedIn. I just always seem to learn something new whenever I look at my news feed.
mhm.
And, obviously there's things like YouTube and Google. This is before even getting to Chat GPT. I mean, there's plenty of talented people out there that have thought deeply about operational or creative challenges. And yeah, you can find plenty of inspiration to work through your own challenges. Agree?
Definitely agree. I think it's the key there is taking the learnings and inspiration and actually applying it to whatever it is that you need to apply it to actually gain your own learning. And I think that's where people because there's so much information, I find that this is for me as well. It's like taking that information and synthesizing it and putting it into a plan, or not even just and acting on that plan to see how it works for me. I think for me that's where I'd like to build that gap, because then it's just so easy to be like, oh yeah, that's right, I remember I read that, that was amazing. But then, and then obviously identifying that's something that you could use in your own role, but then not taking the opportunity to do it. So yeah, definitely see your point there.
Yeah, I've started an Asana board where
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to collect my favorite tips or tricks or observations, and I have all these different categories. But as you say, I've done that, but I need to periodically review it
Mm.
until some of them, become second nature. But yeah, there's a lot of good information out there.
Do you know what? I actually, so funny that I'm talking about tools, but I find that I'm still like, I mean, I use Asana and all of these things, but I still have my, trusty book of notes.
Oh,
And that
you
I like,
can't beat that,
no,
sure.
I really can't. But also I'm trying to still, there's still like that stickiness that I like, and even like Asana, because I'm currently, I'll start using a Google Doc because that's what I use in like a whip meeting or something to go through what's happening in marketing. And then I'll find that I'll just actually revert to just using that and not use the Asana board. But I know the Asana board could be even more beneficial because it allows me to like zoom out and like, check the um dates and timings and things like that. But I just find for whatever reason the stickiness isn't there. It's very
Yeah,
strange.
speaking of stickiness, I think something that would help me, which I'm trying to do with mid-journey, is take something, a tool, and then commit to trying one new feature or one new thing a week with it. And that's achievable because,
Mm,
I might have collected 120 tips,
tips. Yeah.
whether it's copywriting or generative AI or
Yeah.
building a presentation. But I now have to go, okay, I will take one of those and practice that this week.
It's
And
just
and that
discipline.
will make it sticky.
Mm,
Yeah.
stickiness, discipline,
Stick
potato, potato.
sticky discipline, tomato, tomato.
Exactly.
Okay. What about number six? Feel free to jump in with your own.
I
Um,
will. I'm just jumping on your bandwagon
yeah,
here.
okay,
I'm
jump on
actually
my bandwagon. This bandwagon's going somewhere
what
great, so jump
what
on early.
and what if there are only three things that I like about work in 2024?
Perfectly valid. I've just chosen 10 because,
10th
synergy,
episode.
10th episode.
Yeah.
Number six, if you're a knowledge worker,
Mm.
I feel like I'm a knowledge worker. I feel like you're a knowledge worker. If you're a knowledge worker like Kat and Tim, ooh, it feels easier to design a life free from the tyranny of 9 to 5. It's kind of
Ooh.
wordy.
And it's a little spicy, actually.
I could say flexibility, but what does flexibility mean?
I don't know. I think it means different things to different people, to be honest. But hmm.
I remember this is such a mundane example, but I remember in the past when I was in the office, previous jobs, if there was something wrong with my car and I needed it serviced, it was a hassle because I had to find somewhere I could drop the car off early enough so I
Mm,
could still get to work.
right.
But then picking it up was a challenge as well. I mean, such
Yeah.
a simple thing. Cars need maintenance.
Mm,
They need to be regularly serviced if you want it to keep running. Um, but now with remote work, it's not that big a deal to go out to the mechanic, leave it, come back to work, go back. There's just a lot more flexibility.
there's more fluidity, I guess. That's what I find too. I think it just fluidity. It's just like if you need to do something. And it's, although I guess for me as well, and working and reflecting back even on freelance, even if I was working at an agency at the time, I just found like it wasn't 9 to 5, but it wasn't 9 to 5 like burnout night. Like you're not doing like 9 till 7 at the office. It didn't feel like that. Because you could go and, I don't know, take your lunch like a little bit later because you had an appointment or you had to do this or that. But then it wasn't like, oh, you would just make sure you got everything that you needed done in that day. It didn't like impede getting things done, if that makes sense. Whereas when you're tied to a location, it kind of feels like when you do have to take those breaks, if it's like a big disruption to getting those things done, because that specific, maybe it's just, again, the way that the brain works, it feels like because you're not there, it's a different space of work, if that makes sense. Like I wouldn't want to bring my work back home with me. I'm sure plenty of people did then and they still do now. But because there's no, I just get the work done. Like that's just the way it is.
Yeah. So the sense of fluidity
Mm.
to me, fluidity is such a nice word. It sounds so much more appealing than what I said. Freedom from the tyranny, from the shackles of 9 to 5. But fluidity, it seems that this new work environment or way to work is really optimized for adults and
Mm-hmm.
people who know how to take responsibility for their lives and their work, whereas, tied to a location, to me, feels a bit like, having to sit in the classroom
That's true.
in
But I
in
mean,
high school or primary
yeah,
school.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's a really good point. Really good point. And then it also, if we're talking about, I know because we both have, kids in high school, with yours closer to university than mine, then it also means, when once they make that jump to university, when there isn't necessarily that confine of the classroom, or there is, but it's not the same model or format. That can be really, I guess, the trialing for that student, to not have, then they have to just rely on their own motivation, discipline, their own sort of sense of what study is, which can be confronting, even if you think you've prepared for it in year 11 and 12, which I know they do now. Yeah, it's just kind of like, here you go, you're on your own, like, you're responsible for this now. So it's an
Mm.
interesting, and then I get, obviously, then to take that into a workplace once you begin your professional career is another step again. So it's quite an interesting thought to share
Yeah,
there.
fluidity. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the caveat is when you can't turn off at all. But I think, again, that just comes down to your own discipline to say, okay, well, it's now 7:30, 8 o'clock, like it's time to stop. But it
Yeah,
goes down to those laws of like being able to say yes or no to your employer, which I know, I don't, we have it, I don't know if it's been formalized in Australia or whether it was just
the
talked
right
about,
to
but
disconnect.
yeah, yeah, I think that's still obviously very important.
Yeah, imagine like a variation on that scene in The Matrix where Neo has to make a choice between the red and the blue pill, but instead of the pills, it's like in one hand you have back-to-back meetings and no responsibility to think for yourself, or in the other you have complete fluidity, but total responsibility for your outcomes. Anyway, something to think about. I know which one I would choose.
That sounds actually like the dichotomy between being working for somebody else and working for yourself, actually, doesn't it? In some
Yeah,
ways.
well, that is a really interesting area of inquiry, maybe a future episode, because even working for someone else, if you're working in a hybrid environment, a remote environment, what is going to help you thrive in that environment, even though you are working for an employer, is that sense of entrepreneurialism. So if you have some of those skills or tendencies perhaps you're going to thrive better in a remote environment, even if you are working for an employer.
Hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. One to think about.
One to think about. We're up to number 7. Okay, traditional career paths have collapsed, or at least it feels that way to me. It feels like the possibility of trying something new is more realistic today. This is one of my vague thoughts. It feels that way to me.
I think it really, I don't know if it's a if we can lean on the generational thing, that's more of a stereotype, but I think it's more about how people perceive, that corporate ladder or climbing it. I know for me, I mean, you if you looked at my career is so not traditional at all. So, and I tried that way, I got the paid internship at PwC, but like my soul like was a little bit unhappy working in that kind of environment. I just knew it wasn't for me. So I think it's just about that perception of and I guess the appeal now that tech and the startup unicorns, kind of all these stories of like Google being started in a garage and by these all of those, and Facebook being these college kids and whatever it is. um I think it's just what people value these days. I guess that's the shift. And then again, you've got you know Gen Z and what they value and how that's going to shape the world of work. Maybe not so much in Australia because we still have quite an aging population, but certainly in most parts of the world. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that? What about when you reflect on your own? I mean, this is a question that I wanted to ask you as well. And just for our readers, like, how did you find yourself in executive thought leadership?
Oh, yeah. Wow. It was quite convoluted because,
Hmm.
some of my different roles in the past, in the 90s, I actually worked for a computer game company,
Yeah, wow.
creating 3D models for computer games. And then I got into the editorial world, working for the Cumberland newspapers, which was bought out by News Corp, working on all the mastheads in the newsroom for all the local papers. Then from that, I got into photography. My wife and I ran a family portrait business.
Mm-hmm.
And then getting into the thought leadership work, I knew because the iPhone had, wow, we're really going down memory lane here. The iPhone had come out. When was that? That was like
Ooh.
2007 or 8 or something. Anyway,
Yeah,
that was like a
about.
comet hitting the professional photography world because everyone had a decent camera in their
Yeah.
pocket. Even if they weren't a great photographer, the perceived value of engaging professional photography services, it just wasn't that appealing anymore. We were making good money from that, but then that
Mm-hmm.
dried up. And then I knew, because of my experience in the digital world, my experience in the editorial world, in the journalistic world, my experience in the photography world, I knew that there would be a different path that involved storytelling online.
Mm.
I knew that.
Mm.
And that's how I came to work for Digivisor. We met,
Mm.
and then I started working on the executive thought leadership programs for you. And I pulled all these disparate threads from my past and put them into that work. And so while it seems removed,
Mm.
it isn't really that removed because I've always been a bit of a storyteller, whether that's written or visual. Um, I do like interviewing people. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it's not always obvious where you end up,
Mm-hmm.
but there are plenty of opportunities to end up in interesting places because of the nature of work, because the tools available for us. I feel like now I'm on the precipice of some completely different world of work because of these generative AI tools. I mean, if you asked me my opinion back in November 2022 when ChatGPT really blew up, which
Mm-hmm.
was like version 3 or 3.5, I would have laughed. I just thought, no, this is from the devil. I want nothing to do with it. But I don't feel that way anymore because I can
Mm.
see there is still a role for people to actually work alongside this technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, all very interesting. I mean, yeah, I just think with, and this word gets bandied around, is it democratization? Like
Yeah.
everything's just so, and I think that's why, with this, when it comes to career path and career trajectory, it's just so varied and so different. I mean, there's still obviously very much a place for corporate, but I just think it's not what is celebrated, staying in a role for like 20 years and um all of that sort of I guess what used to be so common for our parents or our parents' parents. Yeah, it's just a new the same way that we now have remote work, hybrid working. We have this at the other end of the spectrum when you're looking at your career path and what you want to do. I think you can design it a lot better. I think it obviously, again, it depends on the industry you're in, but yeah, that's that's the exciting part. I think when it comes to being a knowledge worker, I think I can we can say that for sure.
Yeah. What deeply interests me is if you consume too much media, and at the beginning of this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
back in the day, back in January, I talked about I had this habit of doom scrolling, which I don't do
Mm,
anymore. But stepping back, there's that famous line from one of Charles Dickens' books, Is It a Tale of Two Cities?
mm-hmm.
Where it opens, I hope I got the book right. It says, it was the best of times, it was the worst of
Lots of
times.
times.
So, like, there are disturbing things happening in the world,
Always.
and, we're made a lot more aware of those things. But at the same time, I just think the potential to improve your life or find meaningful work or things that interest you, it seems to be greater than ever.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we have this polarity. It's like, okay, some things seem quite bad, but also on the other hand, it feels like we're entering some kind of golden age.
Yeah,
And yeah,
yeah, and that's a very optimistic way. I mean, and
yeah,
there's people out
sure,
no, but there are people out there like exactly what you said. It's a tale of two cities. There are people out there who are experiencing the exact opposite, and that will never change.
of
So I
course.
just, yeah, I definitely agree. And actually, I was going to bring a point back to talking about the career path and like journalism in particular, because you were talking about working for newspapers and obviously, even I think I recently just glanced in my feed as it News Corp is restructuring again, and so there was
Oh,
talk about letting go of some really, I guess, experienced journalism um, professionals who would get obviously caught up in that. So I just think people need to change with like you either change or you're forced to change kind of thing. Like, and how you react to that will impact your career options and career trajectory as well. Sometimes you're in control of it, sometimes you're not. So I think that's another really interesting aspect of it too. I mean, you look at the Kodaks of the world, I'm sure there's probably more than that. You either change or you don't.
blockbuster video.
But well, yeah. Well, what is it? Netflix is. Did you see that viral Netflix? I think it was either a tweet or a post where it's like, keep going because we started with DVDs.
Oh,
Have you
right.
seen that? That's
I
such
don't
a
think
good.
I've seen that.
I'll have to
Oh, that's
find it
interesting.
and I'll
Yeah.
share it with you. So yeah, it's just they started in that same.
Yeah,
Um,
I forgot that.
yeah.
They would mail DVDs to you, wouldn't they? Before they even had a
Some
streaming
yeah, so
platform.
it wasn't as yeah, it wasn't as the store, but it was a
Yeah,
different format than the store. So I think you could be right, but don't quote me. But yeah, so things change. You either change or you don't, or and sometimes you get caught up in that in terms of the negative way, and you or sometimes you can be proactive in that.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good number 8. I like that one.
That was actually number 7.
Oh, sorry, number 7.
Pay attention, please. Can you recite the last 7? No, it's fine. Number 8. Okay. Oh, wow. I wrote War and Peace on this one. Okay, let me try and summarize this for me. Number 8, the myth that longer work hours leads to more productivity is a persistent myth that has been busted.
Mm,
Yeah, because in reality, you can only like focus on one thing or do deep work for like 3, maybe 4 hours, and then you need to context switch, have a break, do something else. That's the reality. People can only focus on a single task for a limited time before productivity drops. So I think remote work has proven it's a big statement that people can be more productive in shorter bursts of time.
I think I definitely think there's truth to what you're saying. There's probably some peer-reviewed articles somewhere around productivity, and certainly when I talk about back-to-back meetings, I've literally seen, I think they've done like some mapping of like brain activity and like the impact of going into back-to-back as opposed to even having a 15-minute break. I'll have to find that for you for reference. But I think it also depends on your role. Like I
Sure.
think as an individual contributor and as a manager, or someone who has moved into managing people, maybe that's a little bit different because they probably do a little bit less deep work. But I think if we're looking at it from an individual contributor perspective, definitely. Again, when although we like to use robots now with ChatGPT, we aren't. So I think definitely we need that break. And I think we've quoted Huberman before.
Hmm.
You've got to it's again about the priming and being ready, like kind of distractions, and you've got to be as a person committed to creating the space or the environment to have that deep focus, like true deep focus, to actually finish whatever it is you're starting. But yeah, I think for me that would probably be the caveat. Like, what is your role that you're applying this to?
Yeah. So if you have to deliver something, there's a clear deliverable. I just think back to the open plan office environment. And if I was to weigh a 3 hour chunk of time in that noisy open plan environment with a 3 hour chunk of time in a remote environment, I just know there's going to be more deliverable. There's going to be more finished product
Mm, less
from
disruption.
me, yeah, in the
Mm,
remote environment.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Agreed.
That was number 8. That was number 8, Kat. 2 more to go. Ah, you're going to love this one. I got to throw some spice in there. Otherwise, the meal will be too bland. Number 9, people have less tolerance for bullshit.
Oh, I love this one. It is very spicy. Do they have
Okay.
less tolerance?
My perspective is it's easier to test or weigh the merits of an idea, especially in our work in
Mm-hmm,
marketing.
mm-hmm.
So that's why I think people have less tolerance for it because they can find out for themselves.
Ooh, that's. I will say I have been enjoying and the content of his name is Dale. Oh, his LinkedIn profile is Dale W. Harrison.
Yeah, I think
Um,
I just stumbled upon him the other
yeah,
day.
and probably because of me, I would say.
Yeah.
um, and the amount of it's been so refreshing because he's obviously been in marketing or whatever his role is. He's quite experienced, but he's essentially debunking a lot of, the B2B marketing trends and buzzwords that, seem to rear their heads cyclically. So yeah, yes and no. And even Adam, I can't remember his last name, who has been, in like him and Sixth Sense, about having a bit of to and fro, because I think he's
Yeah. So
developed a platform.
is that is this a stoush about intent data or something?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, so essentially Dale's content myth busts, this intent and signals of intent to be like it's all just snake oil. So whilst
Right.
I think people, I guess in that essence, I still I guess I disagree with you, because there can
Oh,
be so many people who jump on the bandwagon with like whatever the new trend is, simply I don't know why, but become sensationalized, that are so sensationalized. Like people have short-term memories, and like
right.
when you peel away all of these, I don't know, tactics or whatever it is, what it actually is BS. Because they're just ways that, particularly in B2B, like I can't really speak for other, B2C particularly, but
Now, I want you to
there's
speak about the totality of human experience. Let's not limit it to marketing.
like,
Think
obviously
broader.
with that, there's so many gaps with attribution and this and that, because of the long sales cycle, the different buying people within the buying committee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So people have just, I don't know, I guess people are just jumping on any tactic that gives them some sort of way to answer or make gaps for these things. And I don't know whether it's because of the SaaS industry and what they're trying to achieve, that this kind of like, yeah, created all of this BS in
Snake
the market
oil.
essentially. So exactly.
So when I say people have less tolerance for bullshit, I'm actually being utopian. I maybe the reality is I have less tolerance for it, but I'm projecting that outwards. Um, I'm being charitable, thinking everyone has less tolerance for it. But what you're saying is that's probably not the case.
Maybe when it comes to B2B, people are, expected to do so much more with so much less, that they will buy into that snake oil to make their job easier.
Hmm.
He knows. But I mean, I would, I guess, if you're under that much pressure, you're like, yeah, this sounds great. Like, but yeah, read into Dale's stuff. I've found it really refreshing.
Yeah, we'll clip number 9 and we'll tag him so people can discover him.
He's best.
We're up. We've come to number 10.
Amazing.
Number 10.
Which is meant to be the weakest of the in the list.
Yeah, I just think you can, mix and match. Number 10. In a world where you can instantly generate an image or a blog, creativity is more important than ever.
Agreed.
Yeah, so I'm not dissing generative AI. It's just putting greater emphasis on its human collaborator.
I don't know, but it's quite funny though, because what it's like, art, when it comes to art, and or that's what I think of when I think of creativity, or like what I connect it to in some ways. But some people enjoy certain pieces of art and some people don't.
Mm,
So what is creativity really then? Is it that slogan or ad campaign that transcends not only your brand, but like reaches a whole different plethora of different people, different, like, yeah.
yeah. It's a philosophical question, isn't it? Like for me, creativity is something I liken it to the weeds that push through the cracks in the pavement. You have this sort of generic bland surface or common agreement, which is the concrete, but the thing that's unique, that stands out, that will catch your attention is the thing that appears despite everything
Mm-hmm.
working against it appearing.
Mm.
This is getting metaphysical, but it's almost like the creativity is the spark of something that transcends, the blandness of everyday existence, and people respond to it because it's like, "Ooh, what's that?"
No.
They can actually feel the power, the energy, the intent behind it.
Yeah, I definitely can identify with that, especially when I see some of the work you share. So just thought I'd ask the question. Poke
Yeah.
the bear.
All right. That's been pretty good. Anything you want to add?
No, those are, I think I'd say I agree with most of those. I don't know if I could come with 10 things that I like about the world of work, but definitely five. I think I could do with the top five.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
helping me fix my feed.
Thank you, Tim.